So we left off last time. We had some problems. We went ahead and we displayed H1 and the P inline, then we started moving around. And you can see that we're chasing our tail here, trying to get things all lined up. We also have problems with the fact that as the size of the window changes, we're going to have all sorts of problems. So what we want to do here is we want to fix it based upon the type of elements that we have. We can see that making them inline elements means that I can change the width. If they're blocked, they'll always take up the entire container. So we want to go ahead and fix all that. And one way we can do it is with some additional HTML. This figure here and this figure here are fine, but these two actually are related to each other, and I want them in this center block area, but I want them one on top of the other. So what I want to do is keep these as block level elements, but put them into a container that I can change to inline block. What? Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I need to go ahead and fix my HTML. So let's go in here and see. So figure and figure are fine, but what really what I want to do is I want to encapsulate these two in their own container. So let me move this down because here we go. And let me move this down. So what I'm going to use is there's no way of describing that box in the middle. So I'm going to use a generic block level element called a div, D-I-V. If you look at any old website, you'll see there's no such thing as main, header, figure, all that kind of stuff. Everything's a div. And HTML5 made it so that we now have ways of describing content with our HTML, which is fantastic. Then I'm going to put a little dot here because I'm going to make this div, since it's kind of generic, I'm going to give it its own specific name. And I'm going to call this, header underscore dash box. I'm using dashes because other software that we can use frameworks, whenever you're using what I'm doing here, which is creating a class, they use dashes for their classes, not underscores. I like using underscores, but since they don't, I'm going to use dashes here to get you in that habit. All right, so now when I hit tab, it's going to create the open div with a class of header box and then a closed div. Now, the problem is there's nothing inside that div. I have to move this div right here. So I'm going to select it and drag it down to here. See? Because I want these two, the H1 and the paragraph, to be inside that container. Now they're now children in that container. So I'm going to select the text and press tab, and that's going to move them over to show the hierarchy. So header is a child of main, figure is a child of header, and now H1 is a child of div with a class of header box. All right, so we haven't done anything that hasn't fixed anything. So what we want to do is let's get rid of this. Let's see, because that was a mistake. Right? We didn't want to go that way. What we want to do is that header, since a div is a block level element, I want the H1 and the P to stay as block level elements, but I want them contained inside that div. So in order for me to target that, I'm going to use header space dot and then header dash box. All right, and then open and close parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to style that box. Now let me make sure I called it that. There we go, header box. So I didn't make that mistake. All right, so just like I did with the header and the H1 and the paragraph, I'm going to make this a inline element. So I'm going to say display inline block. So that's going to make it so that the size of the box is only the size of the content within it. Let's see what this has done so far. So let's do File, Save All, and let's go back and refresh. Boom. All right, so a little bit better. Not actually not right. It's almost went back to the way we were in the very beginning. So what we want to do is we need to make the container, that div that is containing these, small enough to fit between these two figures. Now, there's some other problems that we have. One is that main should not take up the entire container, which it's doing right now. So we're going to fix that. The other thing we can do is you can see all this extra space around the figure. We're going to get rid of that and then just add some padding on main. So let's see what is going on with that. All right, so we haven't done anything with main yet. So let's go ahead and do main. I'm going to just do a background color of yellow. None of these are going to stay, which is why I'm using the names. It's just easier that way. And then I'm going to make it the width of this to be, let's make it 95%. Now put 2.5% of the screen size, or 5% of the screen size. There, let's see what happens when I do that. File, save all, and refresh. All right, so you can see there is now my body, and you can see that I have this right here is a little bit of padding that's built into the browser, but I have all this over here, and this is actually the 5% left over. We want to center this, so we split it in between. So let's do that. We're going to do that with the margin. So we'll do margin, and we're going to do, what we want to do is we want to make the top margin and bottom margin 0, and we want to do something with something called auto with the left and right. In other words, we want to tell the browser, hey, you figure it out. Just take whatever is left over space and divide it on either side. So if I do 0 first and then auto, what I'm telling it is 0 up and down, and then auto left and right, meaning you figure out how much space needs to be divided and then divide it up. So do File and Save All, and then refresh. Okay, now we've centered this section. Next thing I want to do is add some padding to that main. And so we'll do padding. So margin pushes things outside the box. Margin pushes things outside the box. Padding pushes things inside the box. So inside of main, I'm going to use some padding, and I'm just going to do 10 pixels, and that's 10 pixels top, bottom, left, and right. Let's do File and Save All, and then refresh. All right, so that's looking better. It's moved this thing a little bit forward, but let's go ahead and see what's going on with these pictures. I'm going to right mouse click and inspect. And if I go into the body, again, I right mouse clicked and choose inspect. I think you do F12, same thing. If I go into main and then header and then click on figure, it's going to tell me what properties are in figure. And you can see that they have a 1 EM start, a 40 EM inline start. So margin block start 1 EM, margin inline start 40 pixels. And what I want to do is I want to get rid of that margin. All right, we don't need that margin, so let's go ahead and get rid of it. So again, we're going to do that for all our figures. So what I do is I put that up after body. So anything that's going to be a global, anytime I put a picture in there, I don't want any margin on it. If I need margin, I'll add it. But let's go ahead and get rid of it. Figure. And then we'll do margin 0. That margin that we saw in the inspector was the CSS style sheet that comes with Chrome. The good news is that all browsers have the same style sheet now. They used to have all different ones, and that was a pain in the neck. But right now they're all the same. So we're going to do File and Save, and then refresh. And you can see now that now it's nicely positioned up in that corner with a little bit of space on it. We still have an issue with this other picture. So what I need to do is need to make this smaller. All right, so let's go ahead and this is the header box. Let's do width. We did this before. Let's do 300 pixels. That's just a guess. File, save all, and then refresh. Okay, so look at that. It's moving. All right. So it's not centered inside that. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'm actually going to do that in main, in the body. I'm going to say text align center. And the reason for that is we want to center everything except paragraphs. Paragraphs and probably LIs. We probably don't want them centered. We want them left aligned. So now I'm going to come down here so we have a figure. Globally, I'm going to now make, well, let's just leave it the way it is for now. Think about it. So do File, Save All, and refresh. What? Look at that. So now it's nicely centered. And if we come in here and then I select that, you can see there's my 300 box and it's really squishing that. So 300 probably was way not enough. So let me move this in a little bit since we have so much room anyway. You can see that I've selected header box. If I come down here to the 300, I can click into that. You can see now it's selected. You can't see my fingers. But if I use the down arrow, I can make that smaller. If I use the up arrow on my keyboard, I can make it bigger. You can see now, if I just keep holding it down, it's going to make it bigger, bigger, bigger. And it shows me that, well, this could have been 400. And I keep making it bigger, 500. When it gets to 620, okay, it broke it because there's not enough room now for everything to be in there. So 629 was too little. So I'm going to keep going down. Okay, so once I get to 613, it fits. So that's great. But I can't use 613 because what happens if the device is a little bit smaller? It breaks again. So Hubble Bubble Toil and Trouble. We have another issue too. You can notice that the yellow main everything no longer fits in it. All right, and that is because of something called border collapse. It sees the div in here, but it doesn't see the figures because they're floating. And that's the problem with floats. So we need to let's fix that first, so that's pretty easy. And I'm running out of time again. All right. So let's go down. We have main, we have header figure. Okay, and here I'm just going to put header, and I'm going to do overflow auto. And what that does is that fixes the border collapse. And we'll do File, Save All, and refresh. Nice. See, now everything is nicely spaced, and my pictures are back inside that. So and I'm running out of time again. So when we come back, there's not enough time to explain anyway. We're going to fix this header. Look how long we spent on this. But that's what makes HTML, CSS so difficult, is that you got to consider all the different sizes. All right, so I'm going to end this one, and then we'll pick it up in the next video.